Okay, you are now live.
All right, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to January 2021 HCD meeting. I am Sage Turner. I am your chair, and I'm going to go through kind of some procedural things and information about how the members of the public may be joining us today. So, because of the ongoing pandemic, all council members and staff are still participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through kind of some of the bumps and challenges of working virtually. To help you follow along, we will have an agenda, and I will be pointing out each of the sections as we approach them so you can follow along with us. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through our website, and there is a link on the front page of the city website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. That number is 855-925-2801, and the code you'll be prompted to enter is 9791. So if any of you are out there dialing in today, thank you. We also have an option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. You'll use that same number, 855-925-2801, and that meeting code again is 9791. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. And at this point, the callers will hear for more options, please press period. Pressing *3 will allow you to continue to listen live and join a speaker queue. And you will have 3 minutes to speak. All right, so to start us off today, we're going to do roll call. I'm going to introduce all the committee members and the staff who are participating virtually with us today. If you could, please keep your microphone muted and only unmute when you would like to speak. If we engage in a discussion or something and you'd like to make a remark, if you raise your hand, I'll kind of keep us in queue. That'll help. All right, council and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Vice Mayor Shanika Smith.
Hello.
Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Hello.
Assistant City Manager Kathy Ball. Kathy, are you with us? Okay, we'll come back. Community and Economic Development Director Sam Powers.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Community Development Program Director Paul D'Angelo.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Do we have Kathy Ball back? Okay, we're going to keep moving along.
I'm here.
Right,
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Kathy.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. No worries. Okay, so we are going to move on to the agenda, and we're looking to approve the minutes from November. There was not a December meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look? And if so, may I get a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. That was a first from Vice Mayor and a second from Antoinette. Thank you. I agree. We'll move on to the Community Development Department update, and we have with us Paul D'Angelo and quite a lengthy update.
Yeah. You need to do a roll call vote to approve the minutes just because of the virtual.
Even when it's a
format.
Okay.
Yep. I know it's silly, but.
Okay. So we've got a first and a roll call vote from Vice Mayor Shanika Smith.
Aye.
All right. And Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
And myself, Sage Turner, aye. Thank you for that formality. Okay. We're on to item number 2, Community Development Department updates with Paul D'Angelo and a lengthy update. And it looks like I'd like to open up the floor to Antoinette and Vice Mayor to ask any questions or seek any information from Paul.
I just have a comment about strategic partnership funds. I'm excited about this year, the opportunity to repurpose the fund to impact the achievement gap. I do have some concerns about our strategy. Do we have a strategy so that we can really make an impact? I was thinking about maybe some type of interconnected approach where we're having conversations with our school board, our school social workers, superintendent, some community navigators, so that we have some direction and we're just not throwing dollars out in the community and hoping to make a difference. I know that maybe next HCD meeting, we'll get some direction from our city manager's office, but I kind of wanted some parameters for how we're gonna, look at this funding, this new funding strategy. So, just kind of doing some having some conversations with community and school resources in order to give us some direction.
And so, Shanique, I don't know if you want me to respond to that at all, or Councilwoman Smith. So yeah, we have a draft staff report with all the conversations that have happened over the last couple of years. So that, I believe, is what will be moving forward. I think there's some discussion that needs to happen, as you mentioned, with city management on exactly what this looks like when we present it to you. But it will come to HCD here in the next couple of meetings, as you see on the upcoming agenda items.
Thank you. It was more of a comment.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Antoinette, did you have any questions or comments for Paul?
Actually, I do, Paul. First, in the paperwork, I saw mention of Eagle Market Streets Development Corporation. Can you give me a fuller idea of the work that they're currently doing, please?
Sure. And for that, I think I'm going to ask Megan Gaskell, who's our community development analyst and our project manager for that project, to talk a little bit about the full scope of their work. And then the updates that we provided was an example of showing how a couple of our agencies have shifted to do a little bit of work around the COVID like with their own dollars to try to help out with the COVID situation. So Megan, if you would introduce yourself and update there, that would be great.
Hi there, Megan Gaskell, Community Development Analyst. Eagle Market Street works with CDBG funds to do micro enterprise development. So they're working with businesses that have 5 or fewer employees, creating IDA accounts, and then in conjunction with that, doing some training to help those businesses be more successful. In addition to that, they did an amendment on one of their grants to be more responsive to the COVID-19 need, so that they are also doing, with those CDBG funds, business training, but they're offering some rent and utility assistance for those businesses as well. Thank you.
And if I could add, Councilwoman Mosley, they're part of that Opportunity Asheville group with Carolina Small Business and Mountain BizWorks, and kind of part of that collective that's been great on jobs and assistance to small business.
Antoinette, anything else about that?
Not about that. I would also like to get a little more information on where we are as it relates to the project at 319 Biltmore.
So for 319 Biltmore, we, with the whole request for proposal process, a developer was chosen with Homes Urban. I think that happened back in October was when that officially happened, or maybe even early November. We have a letter of intent signed with Homes Urban and currently working on a schedule for this year in kind of negotiations with them to get to their developer agreement, which we anticipate sometime in May or June, give or take, working with Homes Urban. And before we sign that development agreement, we want to make sure that the city's is well represented in that developer agreement, exactly what we're looking for from that development. So we're looking forward to getting that. Russ Davis with Homes Urban, that's in his wheelhouse right now. We haven't received any edits back from our back and forth about a schedule for this year.
Okay, thanks.
I was looking over the financial summary for Housing Trust Fund spending, and I saw that last year we gave $100,000 to Thrive. What was that? Is that for? Was it indemnification fund?
So that is for the Thrive partnership to help with getting more vouchers accepted into the community, particularly with the initial focus of trying to have vouchers accepted in higher income or non-QCT census tracts, QCT being qualified census tracts, which have a higher than 50% average of low income. And so that agreement is almost signed, and then there will be bonuses for landlords that sign up to accept a voucher, as well as possible indemnification to protect the landlord. And I think there's one other use of that fund. So far, in an email update from Kate Pett with Thrive, they, I believe, have signed up, it's either 9 or 12 landlords so far. And this first year focus, again, kind of repeating myself, Councilwoman Smith, is to look for landlords outside of, out into higher income opportunity census tracts, not the same census tracts that we see it all the time.
And Paul, this is Sam. Just a quick sidebar. Is that funding, and I'm going from memory, but I think it's important, is that part of the funding from Deerfield?
Yeah, Sam, great question. And yes, it is. It's part of that $250,000 donation that came from Deerfield, with $100,000 going towards this Thrive program.
Thank you. Any other questions about that or any other items? I have a few. Okay. Get to my list here. So, I did want to just kind of ask about so this other prior HUD funding. I think it was the roughly $900,000 that was going to the 16 organizations, one of which was Eagle Market we just spoke of. It looked like it was updated. It said it was going to be kind of hitting the streets in February. Is that still on target? Are there any delays or anything?
Yeah, so that second round of funding from HUD and that CDBG COVID update, that should arrive sometime in mid-February, and then we'll be doing new contracts or extended contracts, but I think there'll be new contracts with Homeward Bound and Pisgah Legal. That funding is specifically for COVID relief. The funding with Eagle Market Street is how they were able to adapt their original CDBG grant to address COVID dollars, so somewhat separate there.
Well, and I guess I'm referring to the CDBG funds that are supposed to, according to the update, are coming out in February. I just want to make sure they were on time.
Yes.
And it's the 16 organizations. Okay. And then the next round for home and CDBG funds is now, right? The application is open and goes through February 5th. I want to make sure that we did our best to announce that today. It looks like 75 different groups had come to the mandatory kind of pre-app meeting.
Yes.
Do you think are we seeing as many people apply? Do you think we'll have that many applications? How's it
So
going?
that is a good question. The outreach that we did in October went really, really well. And we're looking forward to doing that with home funding in this coming year in October. But we had great turnout, a lot of interest, a lot of follow-up questions. I don't think we've seen many applications as of yet, but as is usual, we'll see those, probably February 5th or February 4th with everybody's schedule. But we're looking forward to it. We're open to questions. Thanks for giving that a shout out, Councilwoman Turner, because we definitely want people to know that funding's available.
Thank you.
I have a.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was me, Sage. I stepped on you. Go ahead and ask your question and I'll follow up. That's fine.
Okay. Sorry, I'm getting a little delay in the video, so I'm not seeing the hand go up or anything. I so apologize. I'm working on my internet fix permanently. So the SPF, I'm new on the HCD committee, and I didn't know that there was a change to combine 2 budget years. Is that still the goal here? I just saw it as a brief update, but we're consolidating 2 years of budgets and using the funds in that way in a larger amount.
Yes, that's correct. SPF did not, because of this change, it was worked on last year. So we've combined it with this coming year's funding. So it will be 2 years.
Interesting. Okay. Antoinette, did you want to ask your question before I jump to another topic?
Yeah, sure. Speaking of the CDBG funding and the applications, I'm just curious, what is our process as to better infuse equity in the process? I'd be interested in knowing the makeup of the organizations, the makeup of the boards, the demographics of the people being served. Can you highlight that for me or explain that?
Sure. And so with working with HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, this funding's main target is for lower income individuals and families and lower income neighborhoods. So the focus is always on incomes. What we do try to report on is, especially in outcomes, the demographics of the racial makeup of the people that have been assisted with grants. I don't know if we've ever asked in our application process before, and we would have to run these things by HUD, I think. But if we ask, and if anyone wants to correct me here, the racial makeup of their board, and we can follow up on that if you'd like. But we do get an idea of the demographics from the outcomes, with the main focus being on lower income individuals and families and lower income neighborhoods.
I'd also be interested in the makeup of the staff too.
An interesting question. I almost, in the kind of shout out moment, I was doing some research because I'm just joining this board. So I looked at last year's funds, and Antoinette, you might appreciate this because there were 16 organizations that received funds. Most of them, it looks like about 12 of them were around housing, health, homelessness prevention, housing assistance, A-HOPE kind of services, the YWCA, Pisgah Legal Homeward Bound, Elida Homes, Haywood Street Congregation, lots of those. And then there were a few that were kind of small business development related, like you mentioned, the Eagle Street, Carolina Small Business, Mountain BizWorks, and Spark Foundation. So it looks like historically they've been reaching some great groups, but I love the idea of understanding better demographics who we're helping.
So
anything else about that?
Yes, please. So here's my thought process as it relates to equity. So not thinking so much as the percentage a certain group is in the overall community, but looking at which groups need the most help. So if you look at data from the state of Black Asheville, and I believe it might say something like 50% of Black folks in the city are close to, below, somewhere around the poverty line. Then from an equity standpoint, the percentage being served or those who most need the help, instead of being the 12% that I think African Americans tend to be in our community, those needing help might actually be closer to 50. So it's just something, to think about.
Thank you for that.
Just for a moment, I wanted to say something there. During the process of giving us information per application, per proposal, community development does a great job at asking questions to give us more information on a decision. So if there's any way, Paul, that we can incorporate some of those equity questions within our proposals, I think that'll be helpful. Because I know there is a question that I always go to pertaining to before I make a funding decision. And that question is, if you were not funded by the city of Asheville through CDBG, where would you find funding? And a lot of organizations do have a lot of, other places where they can go get monies, and other organizations don't have that many. So just some of those questions being incorporated to kind of help us in our decision making this time.
That sounds great, Councilwoman Smith, and we'll keep doing that. I think, as you all know, we've made a commitment to all of you and the community about taking a look at our policies, our procedures, our applications, our reviews at least once a year to try to get fresh eyes on it. And so we're trying to keep these equity issues in mind in those applications or evaluations. So be on the lookout, and we'll try to identify those changes as we make them.
And one other thought, I recognize that, frankly, there are only so many organizations in our community that do certain work. So I would love to think about how, and maybe this might be something for the equity department to assist in, I don't know, how we can begin to get other maybe smaller organizations in the pipeline so that a few years from now, they might be in a position to, be considered for funding.
And thank you, Councilwoman Mosley. And a quick update from Jonathan Jones, who's our financial analyst in community development. 21 applications have been started so far, just so you all know, with the due date in a couple weeks. So FYI on that.
And Paul, because this is a new board, can we get a preview of those questions before our next meeting? So they'll kind of know what questions kind of use to guide the staff's decision-making in preparing the proposals before they come to us.
Yeah, what we usually do is, I think yes, and it's a great question. In these reviews of applications, they're coming on February 5th, and we do 3 reviews of these applications. They're done individually and in partnership and with the entire group of 8 in our team. And then we share those applications as well as those review forms with you all, usually sometime around the beginning of March. I know in our applications that went out this year, we did add some more questions, but next year we definitely can look at additional equity questions or other things, and we can try to bring that to you all in advance when we do that, and of course checking in with HUD as well. But you should get the review sometime in that first or second week in March, I think, depending on the way of the world.
So, Vice Mayor, am I understanding that you would actually like to see what questions were in the application so that you all can get a feel? So I think, Paul, if we could send them what the application looks like, and they can start looking at what kinds of questions we ask in that application. Am I understanding you correctly?
You're exactly correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I missed that one, so thanks.
Thank you, everyone. All right. I know I have a couple more questions and comments about Paul's update. Does anybody else before I go? Okay. And for those of you listening at home, we're still going over the HCD updates. I'm going to kind of touch on a couple topics. So there was a mention of the Bowen report, and I'm trying to think backwards because I think we got the report, the last update in early 2020, meaning we funded it in 2019. And we have been trying to stay on a biannual thing. So does that mean we're in a year where we're going to try and budget for updating it again? That's this year, Paul?
So the larger housing needs assessment that we have to do for HUD is done every 5 years. And then we committed every in between year at 2.5 years, we would do an update for, Asheville, Buncombe County. We would probably look at getting that sometime. It just came out in early 2020, which was on target. So we would look at sometime, early mid 2022. So about, 16 to 18 months from now, we get another update. That said, Patrick Bowen has always invited us to reach out if we need anything specific. So if there's anything that comes up that y'all want to know about, I can always try to see what I can do there.
I just want to make sure we all had it in our radar for budgeting. Okay, so we talked a little bit about high impact sites. 319 is in negotiation. Sounds like the Charlotte Street Operations Study is going to be back next month. And 99 Riverside, is this just kind of idle waiting on a potential public-private partnership, or is that potential partnership still on the table? Is there anything to share there?
I would say that right now that is a bit idle, and I think we might have more updates to you all for the affordable housing work session next Tuesday. Okay,
that's exciting. All right, so the 360 Hilliard is nearing completion. I wanted to just kind of give us a good shout out on these upcoming projects. There's a lot of new affordable doors opening soon. So 360 Hilliard, if we recall, has 86 units and 18 are affordable at 80% AMI and 16 affordable at 60 AMI. And that is going to be doors opening in just a couple months in the spring, it looks like. And, there's always that question of what is affordable. So 60 AMI for 2020 for 2 people is $34,400. And other projects look like Lee Walker Heights is coming along. And this update said that we have some move-ins in February.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, super exciting in that partnership with the Housing Authority, Mountain Housing, Weaver Cook, everybody. But yeah, it's very exciting to see some movement from the work last year.
Yeah, so one of the buildings is going to be open. It says 64 apartments will be opening. That's tremendous. Some good news during hard times. Sounds like Amaranth is coming up quickly behind that with another 70 affordable units at 60% AMI. Right behind that, maybe Short Michigan is going to be moving. So some of the units there are already occupied, 5, and there's 8 more that'll be coming up. That's great. So congratulations on that work coming around full circle. I saw on the HTF fund, 2 Restaurant Court is not on there. Is it Bowcatcher on that list? Is it, when I'm looking at HTF, where is Restaurant Court funds? Is that Bowcatcher?
Two Restaurant Court and Bowcatcher are the same thing, yes.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. Okay.
We're waiting to go to contract on there with Kirk Booth.
Okay, great. I think that is all the questions I had about your update, Paul. Oh, no, one more. The land banking. So we've got the 1.5 either under contract over fee review or spent or something, but then there's 1.5 left, right? Are we eyeing anything with that? Is there any kind of movement?
Yeah, so I think what, again, pointing to the council work session on affordable housing next Tuesday, Nikki Reed and I will be presenting kind of a pipeline for 2021 and a sources and use, if you will, in the and how we figure we can spend for all of that. So you'll get a little bit of update on that next Tuesday. Great.
Sounds like it's going to be a great session. Okay. I don't have any other questions or comments for Paul's update. Vice Mayor or Councilwoman Mosley?
No more questions.
Okay.
Sage, if I can, just briefly, just wanted to say, I know that this is a longer read here for everybody, but this has been really a great tool for our community development team. We used to get a lot of questions about what in the heck are y'all doing up there? And so this has been very helpful to get this out to the community. We welcome questions all the time. It was exciting to have just a meeting where we can talk about some of these updates instead of they're over in a couple minutes because we have other things to get to. But reminder to everybody that when these are done, they get emailed out to our community development listserv. They can email us to be added to that list. We post them on our website, and we usually partner with CAPE about some kind of promotional press release or social media. So it's been really helpful, and we appreciate y'all taking the time to look at this. And the storytelling does make a difference. So thank y'all very much.
Paul, I have to agree. And even at AHAC, we would see these, and it's such a wealth of information. I really appreciate the time you must invest every month to get all that on there. I love that we share it a little bit, and I think, can always do more. I wonder, in another meeting, CAPE had just put out an email to kind of the general community that was a summary of topics instead of like one email per topic, and it came across really great. I wonder if, maybe we should look at or request CAPE to do one on these successes. Like, we don't often celebrate the move-ins and the opening of doors, and so we've got these kind of queued up between 360 Hilliard, Lee Walker Heights. I mean, maybe we should have a happy share.
They do. CAPE does look at focusing on one thing a month. I think once maybe the move-ins at Lee Walker Heights or 360 Hilliard happen, I think that's a great idea. I think we already picked something for this week. I have to double check that with CAPE after this meeting. But yeah, as those things come open. And then quickly, if you all don't mind, just another minute or two, I always like to point out, how hard this whole team is working, always more to do. But, since mid-March, we basically 260 draw requests have gone back out for $5.8 million back out into our community. And if you go to page 8, we also, on these CD updates, we link resources. So not only our affordable housing guide, which is being updated right now, we also have the homeless resource guide, thanks to Brian and Emily. Also, for folks who have homeless concerns, it's kind of who you're going to call type of thing and the best resource there. And then HUD, that last one, HUD Find Shelter, is brand new. That just got announced from HUD last week. So I added that link here as well for folks struggling with housing, especially during these trying times. So we're trying to, those resources matter. They'll be on the website. We are updating our website. We're almost there for that as a better resource. So again, just sharing information, which is super important.
I have one more thing.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I have one more thing to ask concerning Lee Walker Heights. I was wanting to know in our next update if we can find out how many of the 97 families from the original development are going to return this time.
I can follow up on that.
A great question. And Paul, I want to echo, I saw a couple more of these really great updates in the agenda packet, but I didn't know when we were going to speak to them. And if now is a great time, I just wanted to say that there's also another great summary document on all the COVID relief spending, the money that has come into the city and the way that it's been dispersed as well, and how those monies are playing out. Thank you for putting that together. So how effective PSGA has been able to be with the rental assistance, and how Homeward Bound's process is a little different and moving a little slower, but achieving longer term goals. I thought it was very helpful information, and certainly something the community has been asking about and great to see in one place. And maybe Kate will do a story on that as well.
Right. And actually, I think that is the topic of what to share with that update. And I did make an update over the weekend that I'm not sure if everyone saw. Jenna was trying to work with me on making sure y'all got the updated, but we did add a paragraph about some clarity on utility assistance. So if you all were able to see that this morning, that clarity is helpful. We still have some things to iron out with the water and sewer bill. With that being an agency where the public dollars, et cetera. But other than that, hopefully the clarity is helpful, and we repeated some of the resource guides there as well.
Yeah, and so for those of you that are listening in the agenda or the documents that you can find online, there's another one called Community Development Block Grant Funding for COVID Relief. And since we have a few minutes left, and this is part of your overall update, Paul, I'd love to spend a couple minutes going over this. I had it for later. So within that document is also some eviction data. And you're right, there's a clarity on utility assistance, but there's an update from both the Red Roof Inn and just keep scrolling down. I think on the last page, there's some eviction data, and it looks like we listed by month the following evictions in Buncombe County, including Asheville. And there has been a spike near the end of the year: September at 43, October 31, November 28, December 24. And we know there's been an extended moratorium, right, federally, isn't that? And then I did hear anecdotally that Biden may actually continue it longer. So we're in kind of part of this update is just kind of watching it. And I know PSGA was doing tremendous work because of COVID. They were actually going and getting all of the files that were filed, and then personally calling all of the people and trying to help them and find them and make sure they were lining up with services. I imagine they're still doing that. But how long is the moratorium right now? Through end of January?
That's correct. It's through the end of January, and you're correct with the Biden administration starting, I guess, tomorrow is going to present the $1.9 trillion relief package for additional COVID aid. From what I understand, and we haven't dived deep in that yet since it's just the initial stages, they would extend, I believe, until the end of September, the moratorium for eviction is what I believe I read.
Wow. And there was also some alignment with mortgage relief. The question I often hear is, well, if I'm a landlord and, I lose my rental income, I will fall into default too. And so there is some mortgage relief in that package as well, is my understanding. And then,
sorry, Councilwoman Turner, just the other part, and I appreciate just with the data is, we're trying to also talk with the occupancy data. It's very hard to filter through this data to find out if I know they're out there, but with no eviction with the eviction moratorium, but yet occupancy rates are remaining high. And from what I'm hearing from the property managers, the larger ones anyway, they're not seeing a lot of folks just flat out not paying rent, but sifting through all this data is difficult. I think in that data I talked about, it shows the number of people that have paid rent so far in January nationally based on a large survey of 11,000 units or something like that, or maybe even 11 million units, I forget. But it seems to follow in line that it's consistent, give or take, with even before the pandemic. So it is hard to grasp. The money that comes open, like from the state for COVID rental relief, goes back out quickly. So it's hard to grasp the story we're trying there. It's just a hard story to tell on the data right now.
I was looking at the data concerning evictions, and because it came from the sheriff's office, I'm wondering if that just reflects the eviction notices that were served, not to mean that there was actually an eviction judgment made.
And I think if I understand correctly, I don't think anyone can get evicted. So you might be right with just being, they were served maybe.
That's my understanding too. All right. Vice Mayor or Councilwoman Mosley, any other questions about some of these programs we've been assisting with? There is a great list at the very end of this document for those of you listening in on rent and utility assistance resources. Looks like about 10 items and phone numbers and websites that you can go to. All right.
And if we're missing anything, please reach out to us. We're happy to add it. And of course, there's always 211, which is the easiest start for anybody probably.
Right. Okay. Thanks for all those updates, Paul, and everyone that works with you on those. That is all I believe we have for item number 2. We're right on time, a little early. Moving on to item number 3 is public comment. As I understand, we did not receive any prior, but is this not a time where if we had callers that we would hear from them?
Yes, we have one caller on the line.
Great.
So I can bring them in now.
Please, thank you.
Yes, hello, this is Greg Bourne with Children's First Communities in Schools of Buncombe County. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, Greg.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to follow up on the conversation that y'all are having about evictions. I'm really glad that you're tracking some of that data. It's been a question on our mind too, and as we wait to see how the eviction moratorium will be extended under the Biden administration, as well as kind of what additional resources will be there for rental assistance. I just want to kind of flag the need to continue to try to monitor this in our community. I think it would be kind of great if both the city and county government, as well as maybe some other kind of key community partners, could try to create a more comprehensive eviction dashboard and help us as a community really understand what's at stake and what kind of protections are going to be there as we understand what the new federal assistance and eviction moratorium looks like. We saw a recent report nationally that the National Low-Income Housing Coalition released on the cost of COVID evictions to communities, and we know that from that data that the kind of expense for for both individual families as well as communities for evictions is high, and so looking at any kind of proactive ways that we can prevent evictions from happening, using the limited resources that we'll have and kind of the eviction moratorium deadline that we'll soon learn when that expires. Just would kind of raise that issue up is something that we need to continue to pay attention to, and appreciate the work y'all are already doing on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg. It is an interesting question. So, much like we did the affordable housing guide, I'm not suggesting we do an eviction guide. Gosh, I hope we'd never need one. But could we have a place on our website that kind of houses all this information, kind of like the update you just did, and where to go, and this list of who to call? Is anybody kind of owning that space out there in the Google world?
It's a great question. I have an email into 211 following up with them on something else to kind of ask that question of who is, keeping the. Yeah. I mean, two things. I think there's two pathways here. One is the master resource list. I think everyone's trying to take a stab at it, but if there's a way, to do that. And then the second thing I think is, the data keeper on some of this stuff, because it's hard, it's really hard to sift through, in my opinion, to figure out exactly what's happening on the ground with some of the data. So I don't know. I don't think anyone's holding that. I don't know if any UNC Asheville or something like that, but if anyone has any thoughts, we can do what we can, and we're happy to put these resources on the website.
I think the resources would help. I can't imagine asking staff to tackle like more work right now and take on a new task of organizing all the data management, but getting resources up there that we know to exist will be quick and helpful. I just did, while Greg was sharing his comment, I did kind of a Google search on, Asheville eviction, housing kind of thing. And we get to our housing page, but there's not really there wasn't a great landing place for help. So maybe something to think about. Okay, that sounds like our only caller. So we'll complete item number 3, public comment at 10:40.
We did have one more jump in the speaker queue.
Oh,
so we have one more
Janet.
caller.
Let's go ahead. Okay.
Good morning. This is Robin Merrill from Pisgah Legal Services. I wanted to thank all of you for your kind comments toward us this morning. We really appreciate it. As you know, we are working very hard on these issues. I did want to give you a little bit more information about eviction. And eviction is, the term that we all use, but the legal process is called summary ejectment. And that's sort of the legal case that goes through the court system. And then at the very end, when the sheriff removes someone from their premises, that's the actual eviction point. The data that you have from the sheriff is going to be that. He receives a document called a Writ of Possession, and that is his lawful order to remove the occupants. There are a lot of things that happen before we get to writs of possession, including just the initial filing, which stays on someone's civil court record forever. There is no provision to remove those. So the data that you have from the sheriff is not going to include people who voluntarily move out at some stage in the process, or the situations that get worked out. What we have no data for whatsoever are for the landlords who use self-help measures, and so they bypass the court system altogether and do other things, typically physical things, to remove people from rented premises. We've seen a lot more of those cases recently than we did in the past, and we don't really have data on it. When we know about those situations, because people call us, we can typically stop them. But I think a lot of that goes on under the radar, where people are either threatened and scared so they move, or they simply take their responsibility of paying rent very seriously. The other thing I wanted to comment on, if I still got any time left, is just that a lot of the people that we're talking to have re-employment at maybe some level, not what they had in the past, but then just lots and lots of people who are unable to work because their children are schooling remotely. And I'm particularly concerned about those families and how they're going to continue paying rent. And I'm grateful for the rental assistance that y'all have trusted in us to help people with, and I look forward to working with y'all on the next round.
Thank you so much for calling in, Robin, and for all you and all the workers at Pisgah are doing. It was great to see the update and that you've been able to help so many families already, and that money is being put to great use with rental assistance. And yeah, thank you for calling in and clarifying that for us as well. So I understood that to be that the data we got was actually the writ of possession. I'm sorry if I missed the language there, for actual cases that the sheriff was ordered to go deliver.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions or comments about that? I think, is that Jenna, our official last caller? Did anyone else try and call in?
That was our last caller.
Thank you, Jenna. Okay, so we will close public comment at 10:45. And we are moving on to item number 4, which is upcoming items. And this is really just going to be updates and discussion. Looks like first one up is down payment assistance. It's been a long time coming.
I have a question about that, please. Paul, I'm a little concerned because this item originally was on our agenda, and I see now that it has been moved. Can you give us an idea why that is?
So thanks. We are taking it back to AHAC, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. So it will be front and center at their meeting on February 5th. I think that there were a couple concerns just around some requested changes from the third-party partner that's been chosen. We addressed those at a special meeting, but then it was decided that it would be a good idea to take it back to that committee for a little bit more discussion.
So I will say, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Because Paul, as you know, I am the liaison, and I had the opportunity after the special call meeting to talk to the chair. And my understanding is the committee is still unanimously in favor of amending the city's policy to conform with that of the third party partner. I am intimately aware with the third party, and I believe that third party is basically the only game in town, and to resubmit a proposal might take months and months, and with the interest rates being the way they are, I'm prepared now to move that the committee recommend to the full council that we amend our down payment assistance policy to conform with the third party. So that is
just a point of order. I don't know the background of anything that's being talked about.
Okay, I'll give you the background. So the background is, so the down payment assistance program, just from my personal perspective, a few years ago when I was working with another employer, I received a call from the city, someone in the equity department asking for assistance, or if I knew anyone who was familiar with the down payment process. Sage, are you familiar with that program? And you are too,
yeah.
Correct? Okay, so at that point, the city worked with the third party, and subsequently an RFP went out from the city for someone to assist in the administration of it. My understanding is that there were just a few who responded.
Right.
A third party theoretically was awarded, but the policy that the city has differs in one regard. That is an important difference. And the third party is seeking to have our policy slightly amended so that they can continue. And that change is that the third party, for the amount that is loaned, when a homeowner sells the property, that is when the loan is paid back. So in other words, over the course of the loan, nothing is paid back until the third party sells. And what becomes due at the time is directly tied with appreciation or depreciation. And so the third party requests that the monies be paid back because it kind of keeps them flush and in a position where they don't have to continue to seek grant funds. Our policy in the city, and correct me if I'm mistaken, Paul, is that after a number of years, that loan is forgiven. Right. Yeah. So the committee unanimously voted to recommend to us as HCG that we support modification of the city's policy. But since the last meeting and before the special call meeting, the item was pulled. And so the fear is that, even though, since it's been a couple of years and with interest rates being so favorable at this time, any delay would be detrimental to homeowners.
Right.
Ordinarily, I wouldn't, but because this is a homeowner, again, I'm going to make a motion that we as a committee recommend to full council that the down payment assistance policy be amended to conform to that of the third party partner.
So you're entering a motion right now?
Yes.
Okay.
I second the motion.
You second. Okay, so now we can discuss a little more because I have so many more questions. So I want to just make sure I understood. Thank you, Councilwoman Mosley, for that lengthy explanation. I think I caught on. So kind of like we did with the high impact sites, we put out an RFP, we find somebody, but then there's a little dance after where we have to make sure we all line up. It sounds like that third party came back and said, you know what, this mostly works for us, but there's this one thing. And if I heard right, the one thing is forgiveness. So I'm trying to think back to when AHAC and when I was on there and we went over DPA, down payment assistance for those listening. So if I recall, there was the longer you held the loan and stayed in the house, the lower you had to pay back was. And if you stayed 20 years, it was completely forgiven. Is that how the policy is currently written?
There is a discount. Sure, there's a 10%, what I'll call a discount in years 21 through 30 until year 30. That then you're fully forgiven if you stay in the house for 30 years. That's how the policy was originally written. And if y'all remember, Sage, I think you were at the table with down payment assistance. Originally, the conversation was we need to grant this funding. It needs to maybe be $80,000 per unit. Then the pendulum swift to where it's like, no, we need to have this funding paid back so that we can keep this funding alive, but come up with maybe some kind of middle ground. The middle ground is where you all saw that policy with that discount starting in year 20, forgiven at year 30.
And so now the third party, are we not naming the third party? I can't say their name. I mean, okay,
Janet,
the third party now wants to, but it's irrelevant. The third party now wants the forgiveness at that long term to not exist anymore. That's the change. And that at any time of the sale of the property, prorated down by the years they stay, some amount will still be due to them or the entire amount.
So let's talk real numbers. I'm usually better in dealing with real numbers.
Yeah.
So say you have a house that's around $250,000. A person is making below a certain income, and what would be required, let's say it was 220, just so I can do it this way, what would be required as the 20% down, or what would be required so as to not need to pay PMI would be $20,000. Third party comes in, does this second loan for $20,000, but the homeowner does not pay anything on that second loan while living in the home. So from a number perspective, that would end up with, depending on, interest rates, that would end up being a savings of about $200, $220, $250 even a month. So that is in place so that it's a way also of keeping homes affordable, right? So that someone doesn't turn around and sell immediately to someone for a higher amount. Mm-hmm. So what happens is what triggers repayment of that loan is the sale of that home, barring, a couple of instances, like if you grant it to your child or to your spouse, then no. And then what is required to be paid back is dependent on the appreciation or depreciation of the home. And then the third party organization at that point uses the money to assist others in getting, so think in terms of like student loans. You got your student loan, you pay, and the money that you're paying helps someone else. So the catch is, well, do we totally forgive it, or do we do the way the third party does? And the reason the third party does it is it helps keep that fund flush so that assistance grants aren't required. And also, this is a very, very specialized lending function. Again, I know really of one organization in our area that does it. And the reason that organization is able to do it, quite frankly, is based on relationships, because it's kind of a risky proposition. And so they're in partnerships with lenders and also financial educators to make the project work. I feel strongly about this program because it relates to home ownership. And so, you know, it's a little different for me, but that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. So what I kind of gathered is I haven't seen this written down or anything. I'd love if someone could send me the copy, but it sounds like kind of like we handle the HTF. It's meant to be a replenishing fund coming from the third party side where they can continue to do the work and reinvest the money. But on the homeowner side, I want to make sure that we're saying this. So the intent when the affordable housing bonds occurred in 2017, then were divvied up, the $25 million was $1 million went for down payment assistance. And the idea behind it originally was the homeowner is going to have this money forgiven. We are helping them build generational wealth. Now I'm hearing it's clashing with the only person who's qualified in our city to do this. So because of the delay, I'm inclined to agree with you that we just need to deploy this program, get the money out on the street and helping people. My concern is that we, it originally intended to have this wealth carried with that homeowner. And it just may not be something we can tackle in a short time because frankly, the down payment assistance is already taking too long. And it's been such a haggle to get here. Going back to RFP could probably take another 6 months before we pick somebody. So I understand why you're bringing it to us.
And I believe there might be some time constraints on when certain funding can be used. I think we have, and help me with that, Paul, 2021 up to 2023 for some funding?
So right now, the overall funding pot is supposed to be spent by, I believe it's November of 2023. So in about 2.5 years, I think that there's some discussion of whether, it can be transferred over to an agency or it actually fully has to be spent. I think there's some wiggle room there if it's allocated versus actually spent. But regarding the funding that was set aside in the policy specifically for our individuals and families at or below 60% AMI, we did put a timeline on holding some of the funding so that it could specifically target some of those lower AMI individuals or families who by nature will often need either additional funding or take a little bit longer to get to where they need to be homeowners. So if we go back to the policy, I think we'd have to, and if we keep that the same, we would have to extend that date a bit to, maybe move it out to summer of 2022 or end of 2022, something like that. So that's on the table, depending on how this moves forward. Kathy, I think you were going to add something. I'm not sure if I interrupted you. My apologies.
No, well, the only thing I was going to say is that, Paul, you may want to talk about where staff's recommendation is on this and why we have either some concern. And I also would like to know, for the benefit of the committee, if there were any other outstanding issues that the committee would need to know about that are different than the policy that has been approved by council.
And I'll layer onto that. Let me add a couple, Paul, so we can just let you speak then. I need to know more about timelines. So if this was going to come to council next Tuesday or something, I would need to know. I feel like I'm missing the language, the comparison, the draft with the strike-throughs. So I'm not necessarily informed enough to make a decision, but it sounds like the two of you are, so it can likely move forward. But I do want to say, tell us the timeline, when council members might get this information, where they can review it before they even would vote on it and so on. And Kathy's questions as well.
So if I'll try to answer these. So right now, I believe it was temporarily taken off of HCD and can come back next month. I believe to Councilwoman Mosley's point, at the special meeting we held last week regarding this, the AHAC committee said we understand staff's concern that this goes against the original policy as listed, but we disagree and recommend moving this forward to go back to HCD and then back to council. There is a meeting scheduled, I think, the first week in February for some internal staff. And then Sage, I'm not sure if if you were a part of that meeting or not. I apologize, I don't remember. But I think there was going to be an additional staff meeting on this before coming back to AHAC, which is February 4th. I said the 5th earlier. And then if the same conclusion, I believe, comes out of all that on February 4th, this would be back at HCD, of course, with city management approval and all that, back to HCD February 16th, which maybe now is the 23rd, and then we would get it on a following council date. But that right now would be the timeline. I think that with AHAC's concerns about this and a little back and forth where, for my part of it, I was trying to get it to HCD to get this finally back on the radar. And AHAC had some concerns, rightfully so. We had the meeting. There's an additional internal staff meeting, I think, that'll occur back to HCD AHAC February 4th, HCD in February, council in March, if it moves forward and with city management approval.
Why would it need to go back to AHAC if we get it out of committee today? Because city staff could always, when it's in front of council, say, no, we don't recommend it. And then council as the final arbiter would make the decision.
And we'd effectively be moving something from their agenda. It would be a simple move. Antoinette, let me ask you a question because this was your motion. Are you trying to get this to council on the 26th, our next meeting, or are you trying to look the next meeting after that?
I can amend the motion to get it to council, not the next meeting on Tuesday, but the following, whichever date that is.
And that allows the AHAC to meet and the HCD to, well, we may move our meeting, but it allows AHAC to meet again before that council meeting. So I wonder if it's kind of moot. What we could do as a committee maybe is say, we would like to hear what AHAC's input is on that day, or the 5th meeting, I think it was said, but then HCD may not need to hear it if the three of us are just ready to, it hasn't changed anything. How does that sound? We don't necessarily need it to come back to HCD unless there's significant changes, which I just don't want us to delay it even longer. So it sounds like AHAC can meet, and then the next thing up would be HCD, we'd be at council, because we know some point during this meeting we're talking about relocating our February meeting.
So I will make my motion to request that it be presented to council during the February 9th meeting.
I apologize. Which meeting was that, Councilwoman Mosley?
On my calendar, February 9th.
Okay, so Paul, Kathy, do you see any conflict in being able to do that? I know there's a lot of production going up for these council meetings. It sounds like this item has the support to move through this committee to keep going. Sounds like there's a window for AHAC to still weigh in and us to still get that feedback at the council meeting or in check-ins and so on. So we can do both.
Yes, we will follow. I think it's totally possible. So I think we can get it on council's agenda for the 9th. What I want to make sure that we do with the committee is we circle back with you all to make sure we have totally understood and that we present to you the changes in the policy so that you all are supportive at this point. Because I think the difficulty here is that we haven't presented everything. And so I want to make sure that whatever is moving forward, that you all as a committee get to see that, and that before it goes, before the final document's produced. We'll still get it on the agenda for the 9th, but I want to be super clear of the difference that the vendor is proposing at this point in the changes to the policy that's different than what we have recommended and why. So we will follow up with you in a memo format in order to do that. And then if you all have any questions, you're welcome to get back with us. But I believe there's no problem in getting it on the February 9th agenda.
So circling back to how we opened this meeting before we went live, can that maybe what we should do is try and have that HCD meeting on the 9th after all? Shanika, you had concerns about that meeting morning, but maybe we can If we meet on the 9th as HCD, then we're going right into council that night. Everything can stay in line. AHAC will get their input, HCD will get the update, and we'll have council that night and get it done by the 9th. Thoughts? We still have an active motion.
Yeah. No. With this being a point of discussion, I believe that I can just have a follow-up meeting tomorrow with Deborah about maybe rescheduling public safety.
Oh.
And so that means that day won't be so loaded for council members, that we'll just have on our schedule for that day HCD, and then our full council meeting.
Wonderful. Okay. So, in lieu of time, it sounds like what we're going to do is now in a second, we're going to roll call vote on this, with the goal being, I believe I hear Councilwoman Mosley, your motion to allow AHAC to have their input at their next meeting, for HCD to try and set up a schedule for meeting before the next council meeting for this item to move to the council agenda on June 9th. Right?
With the recommendation from this board that the proposed change by the third party be accepted.
Understand. Okay.
Sage, are you saying for HCD to meet on February 9th now?
Well, the motion really doesn't. The motion is just to get it to council on the 9th. We can talk behind the scenes and save everyone's time about whether or not we can meet on the 9th.
Because
I
there
don't
is
think
a
the motion requires
full
that.
commission meeting on the 9th.
The motion is to get to council on the 9th, yeah. Okay. Everybody clear? I'm going to roll call vote. Okay, Vice Mayor Shanika Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley.
Aye.
And myself, Sage Turner, aye. Thank you for weaving in and out of that with us, but we got it, and it's progress, and it may make the down payment assistance available sooner. So thank you, Antoinette, for bringing that up. Okay, we are on to item number 2 in the bullet list, Strategic Partnership SPF update and focus. We talked a little bit about combining the budgets. Is there something you wanted to share, Paul?
Just that we'll be bringing that forward to HCD here in the next few months, I would imagine.
Okay. We've got DIY Tiny Home Housing Trust Fund Land Use Incentive Grant. Is that an application that's in process or one that may be coming?
Possibly coming sometime in the future. Drew Crawford, who's leading that effort, is trying to figure out a pathway forward, working with staff. So again, something that you would probably see in the next few months.
Okay. And I recall looking at your update earlier, the lengthy update, the Housing Trust Fund had about a $600,000 balance, and that balance actually included the proposed annual contribution of $500,000 for this next budget cycle, right? There's not really any money.
And actually, that's a good question. I don't think so. I think in I believe the balance is about $600,000 without considering that $500,000. I'll double check that, Sage. I apologize. I know it's an estimate. Yeah, I know it talks about an estimate, but I don't think that was included in that actual green $600,000 give or take balance. So I'll double check that.
Thank you. And then we have Haywood Street Congregation, HTF, listed here. So maybe this would be helpful for me on the broader picture. If we could, I understand now they haven't actually applied. Their design application and the stuff is not actually in, so it hasn't started that review timeline. We have received as counselors emails about this project. So I think it's beneficial always to educate. So right now we've got, to date, we have talked about council removed that parcel of land from the land it was restricting under urban rural history purposes, and this land was set aside. Then there was an HCD meeting in November that said we would like to move forward on a council recommendation to commit this land to the Haywood Street Congregation. Then there will be a separate process that comes up when they say, here's the kind of building we want to build. This is what it looks like. Here's where the trees are and the windows are and so on. At which point it will go through a standard review process and there will be public input all along the way. And right now you've got it on here because are we going to handle the Housing Trust Fund loan request separately?
Yeah, and so I think that was a good summary, and I might see if Nikki Reed, who's on this call, wants to add anything to this. But I think one thing, as a reminder to everyone, is that normally we bring the entitlements for the Housing Trust Fund to come to HCD and then council along with the full entitlements, like you said, whether it's conditional zoning, what the building's going to look like, and all of that. So we're going to adhere to that typical process we do here. So you will see a full and complete housing trust fund application come before HCD in the next few months as Haywood moves forward with that process. Nikki, I think, can answer any other process questions you might have.
Nikki, are you with us? Did you want to share anything?
Sure. I think I think Paul is right on there in terms of what HCD's calendar will look like. I think the only thing to keep in mind is that February 23rd, based on the last HCD vote of 2-1 in favor of the land transaction. So council will hear the proposal regarding the land transaction at the February 23rd meeting.
Oh, great. Okay. Great. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Any other questions about these particular items under section 4 from Vice Mayor or Councilwoman Mosley? Okay, thank you. And we're moving on to item 5. And again, I'm new here and I'm not sure why AHAC has its own item on HCD, or is this meant to just update us on what AHAC has been working on, or?
And so
okay.
that's just me trying to fill an agenda, but I'm kidding. I'm just trying to make sure that everyone's got the information for what's being discussed at AHAC. And so if it's helpful, great. If it's not, we can take it off, but just so you see the things we're discussing at AHAC.
I always appreciate, and one bullet line might be any action items that came out of there, so that I may know the action items without reading all of the minutes. That would be helpful. And Councilwoman Mosley, you are the new chair for this group. Did you want to share anything about other items that are being worked on in AHAC or things that should be on our radar?
Well, actually, the down payment assistance was the main thing at the last meeting, and I think it was probably going to be considered at the next, but it might not necessarily have to be in the same capacity. No real updates other than that for now.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I believe we are through our agenda and that we are done a little early. We did not have any public comments, sir. And Jenna, correct me if I'm wrong, we do not have any more callers that need to speak to anything. And we should be ready to adjourn. Any last information from staff? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending our Housing and Community Development. Thank you, staff, for all of your hard work that went into all those updates. And we will circle back with you behind the scenes, Councilwomen, about the next meeting and the potential change to that date. And for those of you listening in, we do have a council retreat that conflicts with the next HCD meeting, and the meeting, therefore, may be moved, canceled, or some other day that week. If you could tune into our website for updates, that'd be great. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Bye-bye.